afternoon, guests and honoured colleagues. I'm Doreen Cantrell. I'm the head of the College of Life Sciences, and I'm really very pleased to welcome you all here for the opening of this new building, which we're going to call the Discovery Centre. You'll all be pleased to know I'm not going to say very much at all, partly because I have got the most awful virus that I have transmitted to a lot of you by now, I hope. So if I've not been shaking your hand, that's why. Anyway, I'd just like to hand over now to our principal, Pete Downs, who will say a few words.
Thank you, Doreen, and let me add my welcome to all of you today. It's fantastic to see so many people here, not just from the university, but from our colleagues around the city in businesses and from so many different backgrounds. So welcome again. Now, standing here in this magnificent research complex, it's really quite impossible to imagine a time not so long ago when the science of biochemistry in Dundee was practiced in a disused stable block. And the journey from that time to build a community of more than 1,000 scientists and support staff is one that I'm often asked about. And famously, or at least I think it's famously, it's been claimed that our strategy to achieve all this has been that we have no strategy. And whilst that's a useful soundbite, it is, in fact, only partly true. There was at least a philosophy, and that philosophy came initially from our first professor of biochemistry, Peter Garland. And his idea was simple: to recruit only people who are better than us. And there was also unbridled ambition and drive to bring the world's leading scientists to Dundee, to create a culture that is inwardly cooperative and outwardly intensively competitive. And I should mention here Philip Cohen. Many of our colleagues will have come here because of Philip, who for so many years both symbolized and put into practice that philosophy. He asked all candidates for academic posts the same question. It was not, what can Dundee do for you? But what are you prepared to do for Dundee? Of course, Philip's ambition eventually outgrew the original Medical Sciences Institute. That's the sort of building right along at the end in that direction, built in the 1970s and internally refurbished in the last few years. But it was his vision and fundraising campaign which brought the first major expansion, which was the construction of the Wellcome Building, which had attracted the largest ever charitable donation to a Scottish university. And the James Black Centre was to follow a few years later, as Mike Ferguson, who will speak to you later, took up the reins as Dean of Research in the College of Life Sciences. And as we'll hear from Mike, it was his and Alan Fairlamb's ambition to translate fundamental research in tropical diseases into life-saving treatments, which lay behind the development of an industry-standard drug discovery capacity in this complex. Now, that too rapidly outgrew space in the James Black Centre, and that was one of the foundation stones for the drive to build the Discovery Centre, which opens today. And you'll hear much more about the science, I think, and the complexity of work in here from Mike himself. But I think it would be a pity if this new building didn't do what I think it does do, and that is add enormously, much more than just an incremental addition to the building space on this site. Those developments I told you about were kind of linear developments. The key characteristic was that we wanted to be able to move freely between the buildings to create and maintain that cooperative environment. And to some extent, I think as it grew in a linear fashion, it lost a bit of its soul. And I think this new building, which is truly magnificent, and especially this central space here where people will gather and share their ideas over coffee and view some of the magnificent artwork that's going to be placed in here, I think it adds enormously and synergistically to the space we have available. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this become a key part of the university where people from all over the university and indeed the city gather. Now, I'm very fortunate and indeed proud to have been part of the growth of life sciences in Dundee. And now I have the opportunity to lead the university as principal. And it was very important to me that the ambition so eloquently realized today in the life sciences is mirrored throughout the university. Now, we've got a great starting point for that kind of work because we have many, many strengths within the university, not just in the life sciences. And some of those are also emphasized today. In the Duncan of Jordenston College, we have one of the UK's leading centres in art and design. And like life sciences, it's connected to ideas around economic growth in the region through its leadership of the Scotland-wide Knowledge Exchange Hub, Design in Action. And we're capitalising on these strengths by bringing them together in one of the leading science art programmes in the UK, with the gallery space in the atrium and the external artwork providing the most magnificent backdrop, and I hope you all agree that that is the case. So I very much hope you enjoy the rest of the opening ceremony, the chance to listen to arguably the UK's leading cell biologist, Paul Nurse, later on in his lecture, and briefly as he opens the building today. And I hope you have the chance to visit the gallery, which will become a public space. So I now want to hand over to our rector, Brian Cox. I'm sure he's familiar to all of you through his performances on stage and screen. He is a staunch and valued supporter of the university and indeed of the College of Life Sciences. And I'm delighted now to ask him to take charge of events as our Master of Ceremonies. Brian.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. Principal, Sir Paul, members of the University Court, staff and friends of the University of Dundee, and distinguished guests. First, let me repeat Pete's welcome to you all. I hope you've all had an enjoyable morning and that you're well fed and that you've had a chance to make new friends and renew old friendships. I think conversation is the great axiom for what happens, particularly in these buildings. I'm a layman as far as science is concerned, and what impressed me most was the conversation that went on between the scientists and how garrulous they could be, and particularly in the interchange of their ideas, which actually led to whole areas of discovery. So this atrium a lot of things in the future could be happening in this very atrium, and it's wonderful to see people kicking out of their windies, you know, like they used to do in the old days in Dundee. What? They'll be hanging out the washing. But you could have washing lines here. Yeah, it would be perfect. I know, it's fantastic, and it's a fantastic building. It really is. I've had with Sir Paul, we've had a chance to go around this morning, and it's truly incredible. And it's also very cheap. And I don't mean cheap in terms of it's a cheap. I mean, it didn't cost a whole lot of money. I mean, a lot of money, but not a whole lot of money. No, it's a fantastic building, and I'm very proud to be Master of Ceremonies today. And we're deeply, deeply honored to have Sir Paul Nurse with us to formally open this building. Now, the building, until today, had this, I could never remember. I have to read it, actually. I can never remember the title. It was called the Center for Translational and Interdisciplinary Research. I mean, it's hard to say, let alone remember. So nicely, it's going to be called the Discovery Center. But there are no boats, so you won't find any boats here. And that's considerably easy to remember and to say. Now, before I call upon Sir Paul to perform the opening, I'd like to invite Professor Mike Ferguson, Regius Professor of Life Sciences at the University of Dundee, to explain how the Discovery Center came about.
Thanks very much, Brian. We were commenting when we came up here that it looks a bit like a Politburo event, and the question is, which one of us is going to be airbrushed out by the end of the proceedings? Anyway, Principal, Rector, Sir Paul, and distinguished guests, it really is my pleasure and privilege to represent an army of colleagues who've worked tirelessly together to deliver this, the latest phase of the College of Life Sciences at the University of Dundee. As Brian has just intimated, we're giving the building a slightly snappier title today of Discovery Centre, marking the fact that it sits in the city of Dundee, which is known as the City of Discovery because of its connection to the Royal Research Ship that took scientists to the Antarctic, and because this is indeed a city of scientific and technological discovery and innovation. To the Lord Provost and his colleagues, I'd like to say how extremely grateful we are for the unstinting support we get from the people of Dundee and from the City Council. We are part of the city, and the city is part of us. As mentioned by Brian, the working title for this building has been up until now Centre for Translational and Interdisciplinary Research, and even I can barely say it. It's a bit of a tongue twister. But it does actually quite accurately describe what's going to go on and what is going on inside. So just to unpack that a little bit, the work that goes on inside is indeed translational, meaning that it moves blue sky's basic science towards societal application. And it does this in two ways: through the process of drug discovery, which will take place on the first floor of the building, and also by providing space to allow us to pre-incubate biotechnology spin-out companies emerging from research within the university. The work that's going on inside is also interdisciplinary, meaning that it brings together biology with chemistry, with physics, with computer science, and through the Life Space Gallery that opens this week with its first exhibition, with art. The products of these multiple disciplines is far more than the sum of their parts, and that is the future of research. Now, Blue Sky's curiosity-driven research is the lifeblood of innovation. But in the 21st century, excellence in one's given discipline must simply be a given. And I think that what distinguishes the very best research institutes is what they do over and above that core competency. So our aim in creating the Discovery Centre is to provide the facilities to do the translation and interdisciplinary activities necessary to both maintain our place at the top table of international research institutes and to make sure that our research has real and significant impact on the quality of people's lives, through their health, through the economy, and through the environment. So no pressure on all of my colleagues then. The journey to create this 5,000 square metre research facility started in 2009, in the immediate wake of the 2008 financial crash, and many questioned the wisdom of our timing there. However, despite that, it was possible to raise the 26 million required to complete and equip the Discovery Centre, and I hope that it serves us well as we climb out of recession and look to a future where science, technology, engineering, mathematics, the so-called STEM subjects, and the arts play their full role in serving our stakeholders, which in our case is the taxpayer and the medical charities. I would like here to acknowledge the courage and foresight of the University of Dundee Court for backing this development at a very difficult time. Obviously, I'd also like to sincerely thank all of the donors that have made this project possible. This includes public and private donors and includes the BBSRC, the Binks Trust, the Leach Family Trust, the Leng Trust, the Lethendy Trust, the Margaret Murdoch Trust, Max McCants Furniture, hello, Scottish Enterprise, interesting, the Scottish Funding Council, the Sir Jules Thorne Trust, the Sylvia Aitken Trust, and the Tay Charitable Trust, the UK Research Partnership Investment Fund, and of course the Wellcome Trust, and Faithful and Gould, who've sponsored this opening today. I'd also like to acknowledge other contributors who've asked to remain anonymous. Here I'd just like to pause and acknowledge a donation from the late Professor Sir Kenneth Murray, one of Britain's greatest ever life scientists, who bequeathed a generous sum to the Discovery Centre project. It's our privilege to remember Sir Kenneth and his equally brilliant partner, Lady Noreen Murray, who together created the first hepatitis B vaccine. In their memory, we've created the Sir Kenneth and Lady Noreen Murray Seminar Room, which is right here behind me. I hope you can see the signage there. And I'm also delighted that their nephew, Keith Murray, is with us today. I'd like to end by thanking some key people, without whom we'd not be able to open the centre at all. If I was to thank everybody who's played a significant part in this project, I'm afraid we'd be here all day. So with apologies, I have to limit myself to just a few names, and they are as follows. Philip Cohen, as Pete said, our distinguished Director of Research up to 2007, who really created the robust and stable school of research on which the rest of us can build. Our principal, Pete Downs, and his predecessor, Alan Langlands, for supporting the concept of the expansion of the College of Life Sciences through thick and thin. To Joe White of BMJ Architects, who designed the centre with utmost care and flair. And I think we might here take a round of applause for Joe and the entire design team. So thanks also to Morag Martin, who helped raise over £20 million to make this project happen. No money, no action, as they say. To Ian Leith, Rob Ford and Terry Sweeney for doggedly keeping the project on the rails. To James McKittrick of Tracy Brothers, who built the centre with great pride and dedication through several trials and tribulations. To Elaine Shemilt of Duncan of Jordanstone College of Art and Design for leading the collaboration with Joe White and myself to create Scales of Life, the artwork that adorns the outside of the building. This makes me officially an artist, which was something beyond my wildest dreams, I have to say. I'd also like to thank Brian Thompson, who oversaw the project for the university and who I've learned is a man of infinite patience, diplomacy and fortitude. I'd also like to thank Norrie Keane and indeed the entire Estates and Buildings team for all that they've done. It's been a real pleasure working with them. I'd like to thank all of the staff members of the College of Life Sciences who've had to put up with a building program exactly 7 meters away from their laboratories over the last 2 years. I'd like to thank Letty Gibson and her brilliant team of lab managers who've managed all of the equipment and moving in logistics. I'd like to thank everybody in stores and the other support staff who've risen to the challenge of servicing a bigger footprint. I'd like to thank particularly Karen Pope, my ever-patient PA, for keeping me in the right place at the right time, despite my best efforts to thwart her at every turn. And to Sarah Hussain for helping organize today's events and tours, and Andrew Miller for superb IT and web support. Also Zoe Hirons and her brilliant admin team for today's logistics, and to all of our families for putting up with the extra hours that go with a project like this. And finally, to my colleagues who lead the talented groups that populate the Discovery Centre, Ian Gilbert, David Gray, Kevin Reed, Alan Fairlam, and Paul Wyatt, Jeff Barton, Jason Swedlow, Uli Zachariah, Rasko Sknepnik, Andrei Pislikov and Tim Newman, and Angus Lamond, Mark Lawrence, and Doug Lamond. And last, but by no means least, to you, all of our distinguished guests, for taking the time to come here and celebrate this event. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the scientists involved in the Discovery Centre project were in no doubt who they wanted to perform the opening. And we're all delighted, very much delighted, that the Nobel laureate and president of the Royal Society, Professor Sir Paul Nurse, kindly accepted their invitation to officially open the Discovery Centre today. Sir Paul Nurse, who is also an honorary graduate of the University of Dundee, needs absolutely no introduction to the life scientists in the audience, and many of the non-scientists will also be familiar with his wit and wisdom from his many TV and radio interviews, where he often injects science and evidence-based decision-making into political debate to the benefit of us all. Sir Paul has made and continues to make fundamental discoveries about how cells grow and divide, discoveries that influence everyone who works here, and which are being exploited in the development of new therapies, particularly for cancer. Sir Paul is also the director and chief executive of the Crick Institute, which he will tell us about later today, and which will open in London next year. The College of Life Sciences in Dundee and the Crick Institute in London share many values. For all these reasons, it is entirely fitting that Sir Paul should officially open the Discovery Centre, and I call on him to do so now. Ladies and gentlemen, Sir Paul Nurse.
Thank you very much, Brian, and it's a real pleasure to be here. I have to say, I love coming to Dundee, and the weather, as Philip always reminds us, is always so beautiful here, and as we have seen today. I first visited Dundee by accident. I was working as a postdoctoral worker in Edinburgh, and I'm a glider pilot, and I was flying from Loch Leven, Portmoak, in the Kingdom of Fife, and I trekked north. I crossed the Silvery Tay. I was on my way to the mountains. I turned back, and I didn't make it. And I landed somewhere on the western suburbs of Dundee. There's a sort of hill with a thing on top there, and it was just on the other side of there where the fields come. So it was initially by accident. I was first invited here deliberately by Peter Garland, who you've in fact heard about, and I gave my first talk in a university as a postdoctoral worker in Dundee after that invitation from Peter. Now today, we are looking forward to this new Discovery Centre. But I just want to take 1 minute looking what has been achieved in Dundee over the last decade. So a look backwards. Because this is truly one of the great biomedical research centres of the United Kingdom. It is a real jewel in the crown of Scotland's research. When I was first working in Scotland, it was only really just beginning its climb to its present position. And I really do need to acknowledge what Philip has done. He's there on the right by that speaker. What Philip has done with his huge energy, with his great ability to persuade everybody of everything, including how great Dundee's weather is, to actually support biomedical research in this town. I want to thank you, Philip, for all you've done for UK science and also for Dundee. Thank you very, very much. And today, we are looking forward, and we have to thank Mike Ferguson for all he is now doing for this university. And we can see the fruits of that labour in this amazing building attached here on the other side of the atrium, which is going to be opened in a few minutes. The aptly named Discovery Centre, aimed at turning discovery research, understanding how life works, into applications which will improve human health and also drive economic wealth. These useful applications, translation, requires special approaches. As you've heard, though none of us can quite say it, interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. That wasn't too bad, actually, no. I'm going to crow now, interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approaches. And we're seeing that in this building, putting together physicists, chemists, computer scientists, with biologists, with medical workers. This building is designed to do that, it will promote that, and it is that combination of skill sets and disciplines which is absolutely required to translate discovery into useful applications. Applications that will include developing new pharmaceuticals for the treatment of disease, providing new opportunities for economic growth. The building will also allow incubator space to connect academic researchers with industry, with the biotechnology companies. Also, a crucial and often difficult step to perform in developing new treatments. I have every confidence that this will be a huge success. I have every confidence that it will attract support, that we will see great academic research going on here, and we will see great applied research going on here that will eventually improve human health and drive the economy and will be helpful for Dundee, providing jobs and also in driving the economic performance of the city forward. This is an excellent and important initiative. It's an initiative of which Dundee, and for that matter, the whole of Scotland, can be justifiably proud. I was particularly glad, I have to say, to see Ken and Noreen Murray honoured in this way. They were colleagues of mine, very much more senior colleagues than me when I was working in Edinburgh. They taught me molecular biology. I have much to be grateful for them. And I was just so pleased to see this seminar room named after Ken and Noreen. They are much missed. I'm also pleased that the centre is called the Discovery Centre. It's so much better than CTIR. CTIR, it sounds like a 1970s pop song, doesn't it? Yeah. And echoing, of course, the Discovery boat down in the harbour, which I'm really excited, like a little boy, that I'm going to see later today. Because last year I was in the Antarctic and I visited Scott's Hut, 80 degrees south, which was serviced by exactly this Discovery boat. So I'm really, really pleased to see it. And it was actually the discovery trips, the Scott expeditions, were partly funded by the Royal Society because they had a research objective too, and collected many samples. Indeed, on Scott's ill-fated last trek back from the South Pole, they were still hauling over 100 pounds of geological specimens when they died. So I'm really delighted that not only to see the discovery, but in fact that this building is echoing that amazing expedition. Now it's the time to open the building. So I have to give you some instructions. In a moment, I'm going to say open. When I say open, you are all to turn round and look upwards. Have you understood your instructions? When I say open, you all turn round, at least those in the top 3 quarters, and you look upwards. Can all those who have understood the instructions please put up their hands, please? There's a few who don't seem to understand instructions. Right, prepare yourselves. On this day, the 1st of October 2014, I declare the Discovery Centre officially open.